Next, we have specification number 6. It asks to identify, on diagrams and images, the ribs, internal and external intercostal muscles, and the diaphragm. Now, let's help identify and locate these structures one by one. So, before we begin studying these specific structures, let's take another look at the diagram. Here, you can easily identify all the important parts that make up the human breathing system. Earlier, we have already located these main structures of the human breathing system, which include nasal cavity, oral cavity, lungs, ribs, intercostal muscles, pharynx, larynx, trachea, pleural membrane, bronchi, bronchioles, capillaries and veins, alveoli, diaphragm. These are the overall organs and parts that work together to carry out the process of breathing. Now, we will focus on the specific organs mentioned in this specification and study each of them one by one in detail. First, let's talk about the rib cage. The rib cage is the bony framework of the chest that plays a very important role in protecting and supporting the vital organs inside our thoracic cavity, mainly the heart and the lungs. It forms a strong yet flexible structure that keeps these delicate organs safe from injury while still allowing movement during breathing. The rib cage is made up of 3 main components. First, there are 12 pairs of ribs. These are the curved bones that form the sides of the chest. Second, we have the sternum, also known as the breastbone, located right in the center of the chest. It connects to the ribs in the front, providing support and stability. And third, at the back, the ribs are attached to the thoracic vertebrae of the spine, which hold the rib cage in place and allow for flexibility and movement during breathing. The rib cage also plays a key role in the process of breathing. When we inhale, the ribs move upward and outward, expanding the chest cavity so that the lungs can fill with air. During exhalation, the ribs move downward and inward, reducing the size of the chest cavity and helping push air out of the lungs. So overall, the rib cage, made up of the ribs, the sternum, and the spine, not only protects the vital organs but also assists in the mechanical process of breathing. Now, let's move on and talk about the intercostal muscles. These are the muscles that lie between the ribs and play a vital role in the process of breathing. It's important to remember that muscles can only pull on bones, they cannot push them. This means that for the ribs to move both upward and downward during breathing, the body needs 2 sets of intercostal muscles, each performing opposite actions. That's why we have the external and internal intercostal muscles, which work together as antagonistic pairs, meaning, when one set contracts, the other relaxes, and they move in opposite directions to achieve smooth breathing movements. The external intercostal muscles are found on the outside of the rib cage. Their main function is to lift the ribs upward and outward during inhalation, which increases the space in the chest cavity and allows the lungs to expand and fill with air. On the other hand, the internal intercostal muscles are located on the inner side of the rib cage. The job is the opposite. They pull the ribs downward and inward during exhalation, which reduces the size of the chest cavity and helps push air out of the lungs. Additionally, beneath these 2 layers, we have the innermost intercostal muscles, which form the deepest layer and assist in forced exhalation, especially when we breathe out strongly. So overall, these muscles, the external, internal, and innermost intercostal muscles, along with the ribs and the sternum, work together in a coordinated way to enable the chest to expand and contract with every breath we take. Now, let's talk about the diaphragm, one of the most important muscles involved in breathing. The diaphragm is a thin, dome-shaped sheet of muscle that separates the chest cavity from the abdominal cavity. It acts as a powerful muscle that controls the ventilation of the lungs. In other words, it helps us breathe in and out efficiently. When the diaphragm contracts, it moves downward and flattens out. This action causes the chest cavity, or thorax, to expand, creating more space for the lungs to fill. As the chest cavity expands, the volume inside the chest increases, and the air pressure inside the lungs becomes lower than the air pressure outside the body. Because of this pressure difference, air is drawn into the lungs. This is how inhalation occurs. When the diaphragm relaxes, it moves back to its dome-shaped position, pressing slightly upward into the chest cavity. This reduces the volume of the chest cavity and increases the air pressure inside the lungs. As a result, air is pushed out of the lungs. This is how exhalation happens. So, the diaphragm works continuously along with the intercostal muscles to maintain the rhythm of breathing, ensuring that oxygen enters the body and carbon dioxide is released with every breath we take. Now, let's look at this table that shows the main organs of the breathing system and discuss their structure and function one by one. Talking about the ribs. First, we have the ribs. These are curved bones that form the rib cage, providing a strong yet flexible structure around the chest. Their main function is to protect the heart and lungs from injury while also helping in the process of breathing. During inhalation, the ribs move upward and outward, which increases the space inside the chest and allows the lungs to expand as air flows in. Then, during exhalation, they move downward and inward, decreasing the chest volume and helping push air out of the lungs. Moving on to the internal intercostal muscles. Next are the internal intercostal muscles. These muscles are located between the ribs, and they come into action mainly during exhalation. When they contract, they pull the ribs downward and inward, reducing the size of the chest cavity. This decrease in space helps to push air out of the lungs, especially during active or forceful breathing. Now, let's discuss the external intercostal muscles. The external intercostal muscles are also found between the ribs, but they are located on the outside of the rib cage. Their fibers extend from the back of the ribs all the way to the front. These muscles are responsible for inhalation. When they contract, they lift the ribs upward and outward, expanding the chest cavity and allowing air to be drawn into the lungs. In simple words, they help in taking a deep breath in. Finally, let's talk about the diaphragm. The diaphragm is a thin, dome-shaped sheet of muscle located at the base of the thoracic cavity. It plays a vital role in breathing by changing the volume of the chest cavity. When the diaphragm contracts, it flattens and moves downward, which increases the space in the chest and allows air to flow into the lungs. This is inhalation. When it relaxes, it returns to its dome-shaped position, decreasing the chest volume and forcing air out of the lungs. This is exhalation. So overall, the ribs, the intercostal muscles, and the diaphragm all work together in a perfectly coordinated way to make breathing possible, allowing air to move in and out of the lungs smoothly with every breath.